Honourable members of the court, my name is Christopher Busby, Professor Dr. Christopher Busby. I'm an expert on the health effects of ionising radiation, and I've studied this issue for maybe 25 years or more. I've written a lot of books on the issue. This one was published in 1995, and later on it was updated in this one, Big Fat Book, 2006. In 2003 I published the first report of the European Committee on Radiation Risk. This one is the 2010 report of the European Committee on Radiation Risk, which is an organisation which I helped to set up in Brussels in 1998, and now has 40 members who are experts on the health effects of ionising radiation, and we've written a number of peer-reviewed papers as well as this report. In 2006 and reprinted in 2009, we wrote a report about Chernobyl and its health effects, and we then in 2012 we addressed the issue of Fukushima, which is the latest nuclear accident. And what all of these have in common, and what my research has been about, is the contamination of the planet by radioactive substances which never existed on Earth prior to 1945. And many of these substances mimic the substances which are used and have been used throughout evolution by living systems. But they have a difference between the natural substances in that they are radioactive, and therefore suddenly they decay and produce damage in the cells in which they reside. What I propose to talk about is the legitimacy, if you like, in the sense of the criminal activity, which is, I know what you honourable members of the court are concerned about, the activity of the corporations who stand to gain profit and therefore put pressure on national states to permit the releases of these materials to the environment, where they kill living systems by genetic mutation. And this includes genetic mutation in human beings who live near the areas which are being contaminated. This is particularly relevant to the Baltic Sea states, because the Baltic Sea, as a result of the fact that it's a closed system, has received all of a very large proportion of the radioactivity from Chernobyl, from the Chernobyl accident, and prior to that an enormous amount of radioactivity from the nuclear weapons testing which was carried out in the 50s and 1960s to develop the bombs now which threaten everybody. And in particular I'm going to concentrate on one operation which is proposed and which has probably been almost agreed now, which is the development of a nuclear waste repository for high-level nuclear waste on the shores of the Baltic Sea at a place called Forsmark in Sweden. It's about 50 kilometres short north of Stockholm. Now this development, which is considered in various documents which have been created by the company, the large multinational company which is making the development, a company called SKB, is to provide under the Baltic Sea a repository for high-level nuclear waste. I think maybe you can see this here, that these conduits, these tunnels, will run out underneath the Baltic Sea, and high-level nuclear waste will be placed there. And it's argued by this report and by later reports which we have analysed, my group, will retain this high-level nuclear waste for 10,000 years. And after 10,000 years, it's stated in this report that the levels of radioactivity will be the same as the natural background. But actually that is a lie. That's untrue. And so even on that level, this report represents criminal misdirection, since it reports on a situation which will result in the serious contamination of the Baltic Sea for people who live long after we are dead. I made a presentation to the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences in October of last year, in which I argued that the radiation risk model, which is the one on which this document is based, and indeed all documents which relate to the protection of the public from radioactivity, from the radioactivity that's released from the nuclear power stations and from the nuclear waste processing systems like Sellafield, and of course will be released from Forsmark and have already been released from a number of nuclear sites in Sweden and in Finland and in Germany, that these substances, their effects on health are not adequately regulated, because the organisation which was developed in 1952 to legitimise these releases is an organisation which is biased and corrupt, and which produces a radiation risk which is wildly in error. A more accurate radiation risk model was developed by my colleagues and I in 2003, and the latest version of it is this one here, which is the 2010 version of it. So what's the problem? Well, briefly it's this. It's that the health risks of internal radiation, the substances which are released and will be released to the Baltic Sea, and which affect people living on the shores of the Baltic Sea as a result of the inhalation of sea spray and the ingestion of materials that have been contaminated within about a 1 kilometre stretch of the Baltic Sea, that these effects are serious and finite. And as a consequence, for example, of the releases to the environment, the global environment, as a consequence of the nuclear weapons testing, more than 60 million people have died of cancer who would otherwise not have died of cancer. And there has been an increase in the infertility rate because of the destruction of the germ cells, the sperms and the eggs in the women, the ova. We know that this is true because we have seen the effects of it throughout Europe following Chernobyl. And indeed we saw the effects of it in the global environment following the weapons testing, as measured by infant mortality rates, which increased over the period of the weapons testing and then fell. So this is the essential problem. The essential problem is one in which the legitimacy of the system that permits releases of radioactivity to the environment is in question. And we would say, therefore, that the conspiracy to cover up these effects may be laid at the door of large organisations which support the worldview, if you like, the scientific picture that's promulgated by the International Committee on Radiological Protection. And so this illegitimacy has to be crystallised in some kind of way, and we invite you, honourable members of this court, to find that the legal limits which are currently based on the ICRP model are incorrect, and that and as a result of their promulgation by states which are again controlled or biased by economic forces which are brought against them by these multinational corporations and military corporations and corporations that are involved in work with radioactivity, nuclear power, nuclear propulsion systems and nuclear weapons, that these are illegitimate and these people should be criminalised for that. The system which allows it must be criminalised. This would be, as an expert witness, this is what I present to you for your deliberation and decision.
As you know, we don't criminalise people, so could you provide a list of corporations that we could criminalise, please?
I think most of the corporations that have already been mentioned, but there are certainly corporations like the ones that are associated with war systems, the international nuclear corporations like Westinghouse and British Nuclear Fuels, and McDonnell Douglas, and there's a list of all of I mean, I can't give you offhand.
Yeah, but you can provide it to the closest 2 days, yeah?
Provide those. But certainly the investment in these companies by the other companies that I've already mentioned, are significant because they make money. That's the point. Manufacture of weapons and the manufacture of nuclear systems involving the uranium fuel cycle involves an enormous number of major companies, and those companies make money, and they're therefore invested in by the other companies that control them.
Are there any civil industries that are...
Increasingly, all of this work on nuclear and weapons development is being taken over. It is being in the hands of companies and not states. It used to be the case that the state used to organise these military developments, but in the last 20 years, it's been increasingly handed over to corporations, which are controlled by their shareholders, and not by states at all. So, for instance, the atomic weapons establishment in the United Kingdom is not run by the British government. It's run by an independent organisation, which is American.
And also civil sort of nuclear power plants and...
Civil nuclear power plants, yes, well, of course.
What more industries are connected into this? How does the...
Well, Rolls-Royce is a private company, but they manufacture propulsion systems for submarines. They manufacture small reactor systems for driving military ships, and a whole range of other nuclear systems. You have people like Marconi, I think, that involved in developing systems for nuclear weapons, the actual weapons themselves, the warheads and the plutonium and the lithium deuteride fusion fuels. These are private companies. They're not companies that are owned by states. That states usually have investment in them, but their decisions are made by their shareholders and not by states.
And what about the mining businesses too? Yeah.
Well, of course, you have these huge organisations like Rio Tinto and various mining conglomerates that are concerned with digging out the uranium and going to Africa and pulling out uranium ore and then converting it into enriched uranium for bombs, or slightly enriched uranium, low enriched uranium for nuclear reactors and so forth. They're all private companies, or most of them are.
Isn't English Queen also in the business?
Well, according to my colleague Sternglass, the late Ernest Sternglass, he talked to Petra Kelly, and we believe that may be partly why she was killed. This was the Green MEP in Germany. In 1993, she was assassinated, and he told me that she told him that the British Queen, the British royal family, had enormous holdings, £8 billion worth of holdings in uranium shares. And so, of course, you know, when we talk about these companies, these multinational organisations, and you say that individuals should not be held accountable, but just the corporations should be held accountable. But of course, it's the individuals who hold shares in those corporations, and those individuals want to make money. So, for example, if we take it as fact that the British royal family have £8 billion worth of shares, and that was in 1992, so we can just imagine, multiply that by 10 to get up to the present day. That's 80 billion. then if the nuclear fuel cycle was closed down because the risk model was accepted to be the correct one, the one that's killing everybody, rather than the one, that if we have the correct model, then all of those uranium shares, as Aslan said, would turn to sand. Because uranium is just a yellow substance, it's like a yellow powder. And if I had this yellow powder in my hand and it was worth $1 billion, and suddenly somebody said that you cannot use it because it's killing people, and that is actually what's happening, it is killing people, then that stuff would just be sand. Nobody could buy it, nobody would buy it, nobody would want it. And this is why there's at the moment an enormous battle going on about the development of nuclear energy as a response to global warming. Because this response to global warming through nuclear energy, which is a bogus argument anyway, it gives the people who own the shares more money, because then uranium shares go up in value, because everybody thinks that someone is going to build nuclear power stations and then the uranium will be valued.
And that's where we come into scientific dishonesty.
Yes, of course. I mean, well, the problem is, and in fact it's nothing new, the problem has always been that science, which sells itself as the truth, is not in fact the truth at all. It's a complicated assembly of interpretations which usually are there to assist the powerful and the rich. And science has got a lot worse in that respect in the last 50 years. In the 19th century, it was far freer, it was far more associated with doing some work and then finding the truth and then going forward from that. But now it's no longer like that. Now science is bought and sold, it prostitutes itself to the highest bidder. And anyone like me who actually finds the truth is immediately kicked out of universities and discarded and not allowed to produce scientific papers and all the rest of it. Although as far as I have to say, it's getting a lot better for me. I'm getting a lot more powerful. I'm now in courts and people are listening to me, and I'm writing papers which are being published in the peer-reviewed literature. So this is improving. I'm getting my colleagues and I, my ECRR colleagues and I, are becoming quite powerful now. And it could be that we will overthrow this ICRP risk model, and we could maybe therefore save the world.
Could you please tell the journal where you're editor, the scientific journal, what is the name of it?
It's Environmental Health and Toxicology. It's the journal of the Korean Association for Environmental Research or some such thing. Environmental Health and Toxicology. I'm on the editorial board of that. And I'm also on the editorial board of Jacob's Journal of of Epidemiology and Preventive Medicine. So it's Jacob's Journal of Epidemiology and Preventive Medicine. I'm on the editorial board of that too. And I think actually, if I don't die or nobody runs me over, in the next 5 years, so long as I keep on at this, I think we will win. I think we will win this, and that will change the world. It will change the world. Because when it becomes clear that these substances are killing people, then the laws will change. The laws will change. And then when those laws change, it will become uneconomic to do the things that they do with this radiation. And then the uranium shares will turn to dust.
Nevertheless, we will be left with the problem of waste.
Of course, we'll be left with the problem of waste, but let's not make it get any worse.
Let's hope the gods don't send solar flares on us.
Well, I think, yeah, sure. I mean, well, of course, I'm a very dangerous person for the nuclear industry. And I mean, it's quite possibly they can rub me out.
But solar flares can rub out the planet in a...
Oh, well, there are lots of things that can do that. I mean, we don't, not just solar flares. I mean, but it surprises me that there hasn't been another Fukushima-type accident. They've got nuclear power stations that are aging all over Europe and all over the United States. And as they get more aged, they're being stuck together with sealing wax and glue and welds and so forth, and it's only a matter of time before one of those goes up. I mean, in France, for example, they are importing people in order to save money, and this is the whole corporation point. So because the corporation saves money, it can't be uneconomic because it has to pay its shareholders. So in France, what they're doing is they're importing people from Romania who don't know anything at all and don't speak French to act as operatives at some of the French nuclear power stations, and those people live in caravans. So they don't even have anywhere to stay. They come along and they live in a caravan, and they work there until they get the biggest dose, that they're allowed under the French law, and then they go back.
By ICRP model.
Yes, yeah, by the ICRP model. And then they go
Which
away
is
and
wrong.
they come back again with a different name, and they just do more work again, and then they get even more dose. And they need to do that because, of course, in Romania everybody's poor, like everybody's poor in the whole of Europe, and so they have to survive. So they have to take this big dose in order to survive. But that's not the most dangerous thing, because at least those people have the choice and they choose to do that. But what we're talking about is people who don't speak French. So if a Frenchman says, fermez le partition, and the guy doesn't know what that means, he might open it, and then all the radiation comes out into the environment because he doesn't speak French. It's a scary business. It's a scary business.
Gosh. And they are totally incompetent, unqualified.
Of course, yes, that's right. Because they're cheap, you see. That's the point. So therefore, the CNRS,
The corporation.
well, yes, that's right. The organisation, the nuclear
The businesses.
the business can make profit. That's right.
It's
And
a
that's not
criminal
the only place.
structure.
In
Businesses.
America, they do the same thing. They have people they used to have Mexicans who come across the Rio Grande into, illegally, and they used to call them the glow boys, because they used to get highly irradiated because they worked them because they could cheaply work them in the nuclear sites. You see.
And how many power plants do they have in France?
I think they had about 50.
Much more, huh?
I thought it was about that, but I'm not sure.
I think it was several hundreds.
I don't think so, no.
Anyway,
But maybe,
it's
I
very
mean,
loaded.
Sure. I don't know.
So
Anyway.
France is actually a very, very dangerous place.
France, well, I mean, yeah, it's worse in Korea, for example. Although Korea and Korea is quite a big country in terms of its population, but it's quite a small country in terms of its area.
North or south?
South Korea, and it's a major nuclear player, South Korea, because it has lots and it runs its electricity supply off nuclear, and the nuclear sites are right in the middle of towns because they don't have a lot of place to put them. Whereas in France, you can put them in the countryside. You don't put them right on top of a town. So that's why it's good to be a member of the Korean Academy of whatever it is, environmental sciences, be on the editorial board, because they are major nuclear players, those people.
Can you please show the book that it has the right model?
This one.
So, it is in shadow. Just give it a slight edge so the light comes on it. Now it's in shadow, yeah. Thanks. And where can you order it? On Amazon, yeah?
Yeah, you can order it on Amazon.
Okay, thanks so much, dear witness Christopher Busby.
Okay.
May the gods be with you.
Let's have it.